Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and rigging. We talk about the rigging all the time. We see the government rigging the markets, we see the banks rigging the markets, and, it needs to be called out as it is, and it's fraud. And Goldman Sachs is facing a multi-trillion-dollar litigation. John, can you go into what this is all about?
Yeah, well, let's read right out the article. So a New York federal judge appointed 3 law firms to serve as lead counsels in a multi-trillion-dollar litigation accusing Goldman Sachs, Barclays Capital, and 18 other financial institutions of rigging the market for U.S. government securities. So what that means, how the structure is in the United States is that you have the big, prime dealers, as they call them, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgans, and so on. And what's happening is that these guys have first dibs on actually going and bidding onto, what's going to be the interest rate on the current bond issuance of the deficit spending, you can call it, from the United States. They have to, raise that capital by, putting up bonds. And so they have these investors like Goldman Sachs and others coming in and bidding on them. Now, the main accusation, of course, is against Goldman Sachs, which is believed to have preferential treatment, which they won a lot of these auctions, as it's called, from 2007 to 2011. So they have had lawsuits against them. Now we got to remember, all these big banks are colluding with each other, to of course take take the U.S. debt and then make a little bit of a fee on it, because what's happening is they are taking that U.S. debt first. Nobody else is having access to it, and then they sell it off to a pension fund or wherever. Actually, mostly to the Federal Reserve, because there's nobody else wanting U.S. debt anymore. So what you're seeing is, of course, they take that and sell it further, and then they make that little bit of a fee, of course, on, being able to sell that first to someone, so nobody else have, access. You as a person can actually not go and get that U.S. bond directly from the government and invest in it. You have to go through Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and all these other ones first. And it probably goes through them to some of the pension funds or to the mutual funds and everything, and then you buy in on even a higher valuation of what the actual currently sale was in the first place. That it's basically rigging, because what's happening is they always get complete full access at the first time, and of course it's shown here that Goldman Sachs for some reason have had tremendous luck, I guess, to win a lot of these auctions. And of course what they're saying now, because there's so many Goldman Sachs people in the Trump administration, that nothing will happen,
as with every
with
president,
this lawsuit on a federal level. But they have the private as we said, the litigation lawsuit coming in here, which is on a multi-trillion-dollar scale, because there's so many U.S. debt that have been printed and been going through this whole cycle through the prime dealers and then sold further. So it's this is something that not very many have been talking about, this rigging of the U.S. bonds. They were talking about the LIBOR rigging, of course, back at the London Whale and all that, what happened over at Barclays there. All these banks are always involved in rigging. They rig. They
were found rigging, Deutsche Bank was found rigging silver and gold markets last year, and then it turned out that they were working with HSBC, BNP Paribas, Scotiabank, Bank of America, and the list goes on.
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to have Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon. What they're really good at is rigging, so they should just go out and start being, hands on the rigs, like drilling for some oil.
Or rigging some ropes for themselves. Oh, should I not say that? Anyway. No,
I shouldn't say hang the bankers. No, we shouldn't say anything of that. Like, there's a lot of people that are very angry at these bankers.
I'd much rather see them in jail.
Yeah, they deserve to rot in jail, to be honest with you. They know very well what they're doing. They're breaking the law all the time, and they have massive funds within their organizations that are set off for all of these. They call litigation funds, which is basically a massive amount of billions of dollars that are sitting there ready to pay out after they ripped somebody off or rigged markets.
And it's all about rigging for these people. It's about debt and rigging, and it's amazing. We see the continuation of this with the government, with the banking system. The government has been rigging the markets, in favor of massive corporations. That the left will say we need regulations to stop the big monopolies, while those regulations create the big monopolies by pushing the competition out of the market, pushing the innovation out of the market, pushing the small businesses out of the market. Then the taxes, which help grow the size and scope of the business and knock out, again, the competition and screw over everyone that's trying to make a living. And then on top of that, you got the bank rigging. So there's a debt and debt and debt of the fiat system and the markets, and then the derivative markets. And then we have these banks just constantly rigging every market in their favor so they can make an insurance and investment and create a bull market out of a bear and a bear market out of a bull. It's insane. And when are people going to stand up and say, we're not going to take this anymore? When are people going to, that's the problem. Because of the government, people can't have that free market demand to be able to stand up and say, we won't take it from you anymore. We're going somewhere else where they actually have some reasonable tactics in order to, they make profit, but we benefit as well by, not by the hand of the state, but by the hand of demand, because I am paying for something with my dollar, therefore I'm voting for it. That doesn't exist in present day society anymore, so we just see these massive blown up bubbles.
Well, what you gotta remember is the Federal Reserve paying 6% dividends annually to their shareholders, which is the local banks, JP Morgan's, the Goldman Sachs.
Local banks. It sounds like
banks.
the bank down the street. It's like these massive global banks.
It's funny. It's these guys actually are getting paid dividends. If you don't believe me, go and look at the Federal Reserve Act. We'll show it here on the screen so you can actually see right in black and white what it tells you that they're doing. They're paying the 6% to their shareholders, which is, of course, the private banks in the local 12 districts of the Federal Reserve System. So these guys are rigging the system as they're also in control of the Federal Reserve System on top of it. And it's just a centrally planned scheme that they're just skimming off the top off of destroying the currency and creating more and more money out of thin air so they can make a little bit of fees and a little bit of interest here and there.
Well, to be fair, they're doing a great job destroying the currency, and they're doing a great job destroying the markets, because we're watching a massive stock market fall coming soon to a neighborhood near you, folks. I want to make it very clear that there might still be some trick up their sleeves to put it off longer. I'm not going to put a date on it because the fundamentals are off the table, but hey, it sure looks like, if it quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. And I mean, the fact is the centrally planned system is crashing. People are flooding out of the stock market into the gold and silver markets, etc. And it just seems to all be collapsing right now.
Well, listen, the big sell-off right now of used bonds everywhere. You're seeing the US dollar collapsing. Like slowly, it's like a slow train wreck. But meanwhile, you're seeing who's the buyer of all these bonds that are getting issued because the U.S. debt is increasing. Well, it's the Federal Reserve. Mm-hmm. Next thing you're gonna see, just believe me, you're gonna see the Federal Reserve panicking and going out and buying stocks. Well, if you don't believe that they would do that, go and look at Switzerland. Go and look at ECB. Go and look at Bank of Japan. These guys are doing it right now as we speak. They're going to buy up every stock, and suddenly the government, the private banks are holding all the assets while you have a complete communism, almost fascist system run by the bankers.
One flavor of collectivism or another. And it's interesting because at this moment, while the IMF is looking towards bringing the IMF to Beijing, China, there's a big push towards a centrally planned cashless society with the SDR. And then at the same time, there's, for years on end, people aren't wanting to use the US dollar as a world reserve currency anymore. They're running away. There's swaps, like we went into in a recent report. The only ones that seem to really want to use the US dollar is the Zimbabweans who gone through hyperinflation just a few years ago.
Or us Canadians. We are pegging ourselves to them always.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and Canada sold off all of its gold.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, we are watching an epic crash happen. And, there's panic and there's a lot of fraud, more fraud than usual, which is saying a lot because there's usually a lot of fraud going on.
That's why you get, as in Italy, for a job in the bank, there was, I think, 3,000, people wanting to get into the bank because they've seen the bank, completely defrauding everybody. And it's like, hey, I can make easy money here and just defrauding people.
Absolutely, and that's why we see these bail-in regimes popping up all over the world to stop runs on the banks, and then this cashless society would stop runs on the banks, because what are you going to do? You're going to steal air? It's not going to happen. And it's all coming down, and
their Ponzi scheme is falling apart. That's how it is.
Wrapping it up, the solution. Everyone wants a solution. I do too. He does too. This is our opinion. We're not giving sound advice, because you need some kind of Keynesian degree to do that. So just figure out how this has worked historically. Self-sustainability, self-reliability, financial responsibility, food, water, shelter, defense, so you're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And on top of that, of course, sound money in order to be able to purchase goods and services, which is very important as this whole system comes down. And you could look to the blockchain, cryptocurrency blockchain, of course, not like centrally planned blockchain. We're talking, actually powered by the scarcity and demand of the individual and the actual currency itself, like Bitcoin. So look towards things like that as well. Diversify and be safe, people. Be responsible. Don't be dependent, because the more you're dependent, you'll depend on the guys that are burying or digging your grave for you right at this moment, so they can shove you down it. And it's like I always say, with the amount of debt in the world today, you shove people down that bottomless pit of debt, and they're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, which puts you in perfect servitude, because these guys love debt, and debt is the enemy of the people. So thanks for going into this with us, John, and until next time, check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube, as they bring in the Anti-Defamation League to flag all of our content as apparent hate speech, because apparently this video is hate speech. Also, check our Bitcoin address in the description in the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And check me out at Josh Sigurdson, and check John out at The Economic Truth at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in cryptocurrency, Steem that is, for your upvotes and demand of your post. And obviously the dinosaur social medias are digging themselves a grave as they censor people and shoo people away. Well, let the market decide what the best response to that will be. Also, check out John's new book, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, ? At Amazon.com, or you could also find that in the description in the comments.
And of course, check out my first book, The End of Freedom, How Our Monetary System Enslaves Us, where I actually talk about a lot of what we just talked about in this video, especially with the US bonds, how the whole monetary system in the United States is a complete Ponzi scheme.
Absolutely, it all is. So thanks everyone for watching, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.